But then they sent out the FBI with the handcuffs, and they arrested all these people and shackled them and brought them down to the jail and arraigned them and indicted them for espionage against the United States of America.
Unfortunately, no. There was one case, if I can back up a little bit,
sure,
we haven't even talked about, which is in some ways the more scandalous, called the Amerasia case. And this was the case involved our friend John Stewart Service that we talked about earlier. And Service came back from China, where he'd been sending all these dispatches, trashing Chiang Kai-shek and praising the Chinese communists. Came back, and as soon as he got back in April of '45, immediately starts hanging out with other Soviet agents after having been hanging out with Soviet agents in Chongqing. And he, in particular, got real chummy with a guy named Philip Jaffe, who was the editor of a magazine called Amerasia. I say he was a Soviet agent. He was a Soviet agent Monkey. He wanted to be a Soviet agent. And there's a story about that, too. But anyway, he was a communist. And he was happened to be the cousin of Service's housemate, Chi Chao-ting. Chi Chao-ting he was a cousin-in-law. Chi Chao-ting had married Jaffe's cousin, a woman named Harriet Levine. Very complicated. But anyway, they all knew each other. And so Service comes back and he starts giving documents to Philip Jaffe.
At the Statler Hotel.
Part of it was in the Statler Hotel, and he did some in New York, too. Jaffe had been under surveillance by the FBI for about a month before this happened. And they had other people. There was a guy named Andrew Roth, who was a contact of Jaffe's, who was in naval intelligence at that time. And there was another contact named Emmanuel Larson, who was in the State Department. And the FBI had been tracking the contacts of all these people with each other. And then all of a sudden, walking into the middle of this is John Stewart Service. So then on June 6th, they arrest all these people, like you say. And there's 6 of them are arrested. There's Service, Jaffe, Larson, Roth, Kate Mitchell, and a guy named Mark Gain. Kate Mitchell was a co-editor of Amerasia. Mark Gain was a journalist who was working with Jaffe. So the rest of these 6 people, we're going to indict them for, at a minimum, illegal possession of government documents, maybe espionage, depending.
But they have government documents.
They had thousands of them.
And the FBI had these guys under surveillance.
They did.
Okay, so there's this hard evidence you have on these people.
Very hard. Well, they also had surveillance of Philip Jaffe, who's going back and forth, meeting with John Stewart Service, who's meeting with Soviet espionage agents.
So one of our key diplomats, maybe our key diplomat
right.
in China,
right.
has been writing all these memos back to
of the glories of the communists.
Yeah, glorifying the communist cause in China at the detriment of Chiang Kai-shek.
Right.
All of a sudden, he walks into a hotel room and meets with this guy that the FBI has under surveillance.
Correct. And starts giving him documents.
And the FBI then gets indictments against all these folks.
No, they didn't. That didn't quite work that way. They got stopped. But the other part about Jaffe was he was also going in between meeting with Service. He's meeting with Chinese communist representative who's here for the UN conference. He's going to the Soviet consulate. He's meeting with a guy named Joe Bernstein, who was a Soviet agent. He's meeting with Earl Browder, chairman of the Communist Party. Like in between his meetings with Service. He's going back and forth between Service and all these Soviet agents and communists. I don't know what was going on there. It's very confusing. And so then Hoover says, it's an airtight case. And I go into that, as I think you know from reading the book. They tried to deny that, but he did say that. And so it looked. But then within a matter of weeks, it's all squashed and it's all shoved under the rug. Service is let go. He's okay. He's cleared. No problem. And it was all fixed and rigged by Lachlan Curry, Soviet agent in the White House, by people in the Justice Department, by a guy named Thomas Corcoran, a fixer for the New Deal, who was still hanging around in the Truman era. And the fixers talked many times about how they're going to get Service off and deep six the case. And the FBI wiretapped all of that. They wiretapped the fixers. So we have those transcripts. We have transcripts of the wiretap. And again, these terrible violations of people's civil liberties. But imagine wiretapping the fixing of a grand jury. Terrible. outrageous violation of civil liberties. And so the FBI knew that it had been fixed and rigged, and it was done to get John Stewart Service off. And when it was proclaimed, I ended a chapter on that. It's called Red's Lies and Audio Tape. When it was over, it said, well, John Stewart Service should have never been arrested in the first place. It was just a miscarriage of justice. And that's in a lot of these history books. But I end the chapter by saying that Hoover and his men, pondering their stash of wiretaps, would reach a very different verdict, and they did. And that was all before Bentley came on. That was in early 45. Bentley showed up just as all that was playing out, so it was a sequence.
So